stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening tonight. My name is Alan Frawley. Due to a last-minute change in the lineup, I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Middleborough Board of Selectmen's meetings, we are being taped by the local cable, which is MCCAM, Middleborough Cable Access something. And that'll be broadcast on Verizon and Comcast. Does anyone on the board have anything under unanticipated? Anyone in the audience? I just have one unanticipated item. I was lucky enough to have a chance to go canoeing yesterday down the Nemasket River with my family. And if you haven't been canoeing down the Nemasket River yet this season, you should go because it's still gorgeous out there. The leaves are just starting to change and the water's still warm. So don't miss the opportunity to get out there and enjoy what we have to offer. That's it for me. Announcements and recognitions. Any member of the board?
Mr. Chair, I attended the Cultural Council's meeting this last week, and I would just like to announce to the town any interested parties. They give out cultural grants to projects for the arts and humanities, and the deadline for the draft for that is October 1st, and for the application is October 15th. And you can go to www.mass-culture.org/Middleborough, and you can find out information about that, or you can call 508-946-2415.
Anyone else? I have one. The 64th Annual East Middleborough 4-H Fair will be taking place this year on Saturday, August 31st, 8 a.m. to dusk, and Sunday, September 1st, 8 a.m. to dusk. Free admission and parking. There's an auction on Saturday from 3 to dusk, classic car show on Sunday, the chicken barbecue is Sunday 2 to 5, the 4-H Drama Club performance is Sunday at 12:30, horseshoe pitching tournament, cribbage tournament, animal shows, food, tractor parade, 4-H member exhibit, family games, animal and children's costume parade, and 4-H demonstrations. I have it on good authority that there's a tractor with flames painted down the side of it, so you probably don't want to miss that. To see the full schedule and the website, please visit www.eastmiddleborough4h.org. And that'll take place at the 4-H grounds at 183 Thompson Street, which is the old 105 in East Middleborough. Anyone from the audience have any announcements? Ms. Spalding.
Jean Spalding, Middleborough Health Department. I'd like to remind everybody at this time of year, even though it's a great time to be outside, the increased risk for West Nile virus and Triple E. We recently had a death in the state from Triple E, and a case of West Nile virus has recently been diagnosed. Not in this town, but close enough by. This time of year, the risk levels increase. The mosquitoes that carry these diseases are more prevalent, and personal protection is always your best protection. And I remind everybody, make sure you wear proper clothing and mosquito repellent with DEET. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Peck?
Chris Peck, DPW. The town's going to be holding a bulky waste day at the transfer station. It's going to be on September 28th from 7 a.m. to 3:30. Items that will be included are couches, chairs, any, I don't want to say furniture, but I guess furniture is probably the best way to put it. Any kids' large plastic toys. Things that aren't included are going to be white goods like fridges or any kind of appliances like that. And no construction debris either.
What are the hours again on September
7 to 3:30.
7 to 3:30?
That's a Saturday.
And that's at the landfill?
Yep.
Anybody can come, you don't need a permit.
Beautiful.
That's correct.
Does anyone else have any announcements? All right. Minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the regular minutes from August 12th, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Executive session minutes for the same day. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. I would entertain a motion to authorize, a vote to authorize the chairman or his designee to sign warrants for the week ending 8/23/13.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Warrants. I would entertain a motion to establish a date for setting new goals.
Did you skip over the warrants?
We just did the one.
So this is new business.
This is under new
Oh, okay,
business.
sorry.
Yep, new business.
So I would vote to, I would entertain a motion to establish a date for setting new goals.
I move we establish a date for setting new goals for our next meeting.
Second.
September 9th?
All right, so I have a motion and a second, discussion. This is, normally we establish goals, I think it's right around January, but it doesn't seem like a good time to do it because then in April we have potentially a new board.
Mhm.
So, next week sounds like a hell of a good idea.
Mhm.
The agenda look okay for next week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks from now?
September 9th after Labor Day?
Good. So should, Mr. Chair, do we just bring in our ideas and the things we would like to accomplish? Is that how we?
Exactly. What we normally do is we start and brainstorm, and we go around and people write down all the potential things that they'd like to, achieve in the year. Then we go back and we vote on them and try and cull them down to a manageable number, basically. So it's a winnowing process, and, we go through several steps to try and get down to, and then we'll come back probably the following week with the list and have you approve it.
And we'll be working up our last list of goals, correct?
Yeah, we'll bring last year's and, have that as one of the things you look at.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to invite those in attendance, those watching, that it's a great time to voice your opinions to this board, either through our administrative assistant, Jackie is to my left. Call the number on the website to reach her, or go online to our email, because we'd love to hear from people if they feel that things are dragging on certain topics, or things have gone undone, or you're unhappy about how things were done in this past year. By all means, we're only as good at times as people let us know we are. So please reach out to us, especially on email, within the next 2 weeks, about things you'd like to see done. Thank you.
All right. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, I would entertain a motion to vote to schedule a road layout hearing for 9/16/2013 at 7:30 PM, and to refer the layout plans to the planning board for the following ways: Tall Oak Estates, Acorn Ridge Estates, and Donner Estates.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Mr.
Charlie,
Chairman,
you wanna
these are the 3 roads that both the planning board and Mr. Peck and I have been working on for the last several months. Tall Oak and Acorn Ridge, which is also known as Veronica Lane, have been in existence for quite some time, and the residents are working diligently to bring them up to standards so that they can be accepted. Acorn Ridge is going to be similar to River's Edge and Edgewater, where there will be a betterment to help the residents pay for the work. Donner Estates is relatively recent, and that one is progressing through the normal protocols with the planning board. What we do now is we refer them now back to the planning board for their recommendation, and we'll have a layout hearing on the 16th, and then it has to go to town. Those will be warrant articles that will go to town meeting on October 7th.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm ecstatic at the amount of roads we're getting approved. I mean, for years, you'd see maybe one a year. If we were lucky, you'd hear a lot of people talking about how they couldn't get their roads approved. So I'm thrilled with the progress that Charlie and Mr. Peck and the planning board and Ruth Joffreys are making in this regard. I think we still have a couple hundred unapproved roads, so it's, we're heading in the right direction. It's a long road, but we're getting there. So thanks to everybody who's put in the time and the effort on these things. Any other comments or questions? Anyone from the audience? I'm sorry, Mr. Glover?
Well, so if I understand you, through you to Charlie, if I understand, I mean, there are some differences here with these, and I, this has sort of been a long-going process for us, because you have certain situations, like I know Donna Estates just finished, I think, a house last year and got it off the market. And it looks like there's another lot that could possibly be built on, but
Right.
at this point, we're looking forward to finishing the road.
Right, and having it accepted.
And having accepted, whereas with Acorn Ridge Estates, though, this might be one of those, sounds like that's one of those situations where this guy's gone. He's not.
Yeah, Acorn Ridge, he's gone, and there's a fair amount of work to be done, so that's why the residents have gotten together, and the town's willing to do a betterment so that they can get the road up to the standard that we need to accept it.
With Acorn, whereas the other two, there's still opportunity to sit down with the developer to just go over, what it is our expectations are for them with the road.
Right.
In order
Although
to
I think in the case of Tall Oak, I think the residents are also participating in those improvements. But that road was built very well. It's held up very well. There's some minor things that had to be done, and I believe they've been all done, Chris? Yeah, they've already been completed. So as far as our Public Works Department is concerned, the road is now in a satisfactory condition to accept.
Great.
So I think the only thing that we're still working on is getting the plans done. We need a Mylar, but that's also in the works.
And once this is done, then these folks can start getting their mail at the end of their driveway, the trash
all those
picked up
things,
at the end of the driveway, the plows, and, okay, great.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Anything else? Any member of the board? Any member of the audience? All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Okay, I would entertain a motion to vote on to issue a proclamation for Constitution Week, September 17th to the 23rd of 2013, as requested by Lydia Cobb. No idea how to say that second name. Porchetchin, chapter of the Massachusetts Daughters of the American Revolution.
So moved.
Second.
All right. So this is, we received a letter from Ms. Cobb asking us to sign the proclamation, and she even gave us a self-addressed stamped envelope. And I'll read the proclamation. Whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 226th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore I, blank, by virtue of the authority vested in me as governor or mayor of the state or city of Middleborough, I guess, in the state of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim the week September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Sounds pretty good to me. Any discussion? Anybody from the audience? All right.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to commend this group for bringing this forward. It's a great idea and very important.
We certainly do have a tendency to forget how lucky we are. All right. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, I would entertain a motion to have a vote to authorize the chairman to sign the Federal Equitable Sharing Agreement and Certification by the Middleborough Police Department to the Department of Justice and Department of Treasury.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Costello, do you want to speak to this, or?
Apparently, this is something we have to sign every year, although I think in the past maybe I signed it, but this year they're requesting that somebody from the board sign it.
All right. So the letter we have, it says, "We certify," encloses the Federal Equitable Sharing Agreement and certification that the Police Department submits each year to the Department of Justice and the Department of the Treasury. We certify to them how much money we've received and/or spent during the previous fiscal year for the federally forfeited cash, properties, proceeds, and any interest earned thereon, which are equitably shared with participating law enforcement agencies. We receive very little of the federally forfeited cash, property, or proceeds. As can be seen by the attached form, we only have $585.03 in the account. The non-interest-bearing account was established by Town Accountant Steve Dooney in 2011. We have a separate account for all non-federal forfeitures. In previous years, the town manager signed the form, but as you can see on page 2 in signatories, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen should sign. Please have Chairman McKinnon sign as the governing body head on page 5 and return the form as soon as possible. Thank you. All right.
Just one question, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Through you to Mr. Costello. Is there a time limit on keeping this property, that being cash? There is. I know it's like an IOLTA account in some ways. It's just, it sits there and we can't earn interest on it, but.
I honestly don't know. I can find out, but
okay.
this is nothing I've ever looked into. But
Okay.
I'll let you know if there's, so basically, is there a time limit about how long we can keep this?
Right. I mean, like, you know, there's constraints that are like put on banks, or like if somebody was to go in and take out an official check, you know, you just can't sit on it forever. Eventually, you're going to get a letter from the state saying, you know, this is property, something has to be done with it, has to be returned or it's forfeited. So I don't know at some point where we just forfeit it to somebody or it becomes ours. I don't know.
All right, I'll find out.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Anyone in the audience? Nope. All right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, moving on. I would entertain a motion to take a vote to accept the gift of Middleborough Gas and Electric Division Truck Number 31, a year 2000 half-ton Chevy two-wheel drive truck to the town for use by the DPW Highway Department for use at the transfer station. I would entertain a motion
So moved.
to that effect.
Second.
All right. Discussion? Mr. Beck?
Sure, we're looking to use this truck up at the transfer station for the employee that's up there to essentially allow him to be mobile around the landfill and the transfer station. It's pretty much used on site. Might come down to the highway garage once a week, maybe twice a week at the most. So we didn't feel that it was necessary to put a department truck from our fleet that we have now up there. So that's why I looked at this opportunity to grab this truck.
All right. Anybody else? Any comments, questions from the board? From the audience? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this is going pretty smoothly. All right.
Hey, you didn't call Bickford yet, did you?
Nope,
27 Webster Street?
not yet. We'll get to it. I'll let you know.
All right, let me know.
All right. I would entertain a motion to take a vote to sign the fiscal year 2015 Chapter 61B application for property owned in Plimpton.
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion, yeah. Thank you.
All right. This is the, I believe this is the
Soul Farm.
Soul Farm, right?
Yeah, some of the properties in Plimpton, and we discovered several years ago that by putting in this classification, it will, because the Soul Homestead organization pays the taxes on the land, it ends up saving them operating costs by doing this. So we've been doing it now, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years.
All right. Anybody on the board have any questions? Anybody in the audience, questions or comments? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right. Item G is a discussion and an update on the bank building space. Mr. Costello?
Mr. Chairman, I've given you tonight a draft RFP to go out and search for a new tenant for our space at the bank building. We have been, since we learned that the property was going to be vacated by Eastern Bank, we've been doing a little marketing among the banking community for this space. Treasurer Judy McDonald talked to a number of banks at her recent conference. We've developed a flyer, and we're also going to do some more targeted marketing to banks and credit unions that we think would be interested in the space. So I'm suggesting we're going to hold off on this for a couple of weeks and see if we can identify some interested institutions, and then release it and try to have it back probably by the end of October, have everything back to us by the end of October. We've agreed already to let Eastern stay there until December 1. So, but certainly we'd like to have as much continuity in that space as possible, and we'll try and do that. But there was a very interesting article in the Globe yesterday, which I was happy to read, which talked about how particularly Bank of America is phasing out their drive-through teller locations, that they find that those aren't as popular as they used to be. And certainly that's the one thing that we don't offer in that space, is any ability to do any kind of drive-through. But if in fact that's becoming less and less of a desirable attribute, then I think that helps us rather than hurts us. So so if there are any comments you have or any thoughts or suggestions, please let me know. This is basically what the law prescribes on how we go about this process. So hopefully we'll be able to drum up some interest and get somebody to take over that space.
So Eastern Bank will occupy it till December 1st?
Yeah, they'll close the branch, I think, sometime in October, but they wanted some extra time to clean out. So a couple weeks ago, we gave them that opportunity.
All right. The board have any comments or questions? Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions? All right. Hearings, meetings, and licenses. 7:30, pretty good. 7:27. We'll open it up. Middleborough Gas and Electric and Verizon poll hearing for Fuller Street. I get to use this. Open the hearing in the Selectmen's Meeting Room at Town Hall, 10 Nickerson Ave, Middleborough, Mass. Monday, August 26th at 7:30 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the petition filed by the Middleborough Gas and Electric Department and Verizon to place 2 new poles on Fuller Street, pole number 78 and pole number 79, to be added to extend pole line by 2 poles for a distance of 360 feet to accommodate electric service to a new house. Anyone desiring to be heard on this matter should appear at the time and place designated. Hello, Mr. Taylor.
Evening. How are you?
Doing well. Yourself?
Good.
Good.
Good. Well, you basically said it. We're going to extend the pole line by 2 sections to provide service to a new home under construction on Fuller Street.
All right. Are there any abutters that have to be notified about this or anything like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
All right. Are there any abutters here who'd like to speak? No? All right. Anybody on the board have any questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions? All right. I'd entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion to approve the 2 new poles on Fuller Street.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Oh, I have to close the hearing. Anyone else? Hearing's now closed.
Now your motion. I make a
All right,
motion,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Chair.
yeah.
Sorry
I would
about
now
that.
entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the Middleborough Gas and Electric and any other party involved to place 2 new poles on Fuller Street.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone in the audience have anything? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Taylor. All right, moving right along. Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
Manager's report.
Charlie, you want to do
I will.
town manager's report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just an update on the, we've discussed also the other bank in town, the Mayflower Bank being bought out by Rockland Trust, and this was just some information we got about Rockland is going to move their branch to the 135 South Main Street location, but we've also been told that they're going to occupy the Mayflower property for their offices. We don't know yet what's going to happen up at Station Street. That has not been determined, but just wanted, since we had talked about this, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. And then the second letter was something we've talked about a lot, the Middleborough Rotary, and in fact, at a meeting 2 weeks ago, the Joint Transportation Planning Committee, or Planning Group, voted to commit a year's worth of TIP funds, the Transportation Improvement Program funds, which amount to anywhere between $11 and $15 million in any given year, to the Rotary when it's ready to be built. And I think that was a very important move on their part, because I think it also is just about the amount of money that our design differs with the state design. So if there's any reluctance on the part of the Department of Transportation not to do our design because of cost, we've solved that problem for them. So hopefully, I'm going to be sending this letter to Secretary Davey. He's gotten the copy, but I'm going to send our letter, to point out to Secretary Davey that we should all now be in agreement about the Middleborough option here for the Rotary, and hopefully we can all get together on that and move forward. So I thought that was, good
Great.
news. It was, I was at the meeting. It was unanimously approved. I'm particularly impressed by that committee, because committing a full year's worth of funds means that other projects will have to wait a year longer. And we've done it in the past. We did it for another important project, and there was no hesitation about doing it for this project, which I was very gratified to see. And that's really all I have tonight.
All right, if I can just read one letter to clarify some things. One letter out of this, the letter from the Serpent Group. Improvements to the Middleborough Rotary have been a recommendation of the SMMPO Regional Transportation Plans since 1982. So, it's been a long time coming. I'm pretty happy we finally got there. So, maybe we can cross that off the list of things to do, our goals for next year.
In our lifetime, hopefully.
Mr. Chair, if I may comment on this, could we send a copy of this and notify Representative Keating's
Yeah, we
office?
absolutely are.
Because he's been very supportive, and I'd like to thank him for that.
Yeah, no, that was my plan, as well as all our state representatives as well, just so that they know that hopefully we've broken the logjam here and, can get moving.
Thank you.
All right. It's 7:33. We have a meeting scheduled for 7:35. So I guess we'll start it. Open up the meeting for the hearing. We're going to open up a hearing as the Board of Health for a condemnation hearing regarding 27 Webster Street. Ms. Spalding?
Good evening, board members. This is regarding a property, 27 Webster Street. We have been receiving complaints over the last 2-3 months. Heavy complaints. numerous complaints, and we initially sent an order about a month or so ago due to there being no utilities and no electric or water service, that the property was uninhabitable, providing a time frame for the family to bring the property into compliance and for the property not to be occupied until that time and that it to be cleaned up somewhat. Since then, it has deteriorated even further, and more nuisance violations as well, with one of the family members occupying it. We have recently learned that the property belonged to the parents, who have both been deceased, so it is in an, I guess it's in an estate at this point, and there are 6 siblings. Most of them, I think, live out of state, with a couple of them may be living in this state. One of them has been intermittently inhabiting the property. We were recently contacted by a local attorney who had been contacted by a couple of the family members, and we were under the impression that they were going to try to work something out to comply with what we needed for the property to come into compliance. So Ms. Gardner is the lead inspector on this, so I was going to turn this over so she could apprise you. We bring this before the board. It's our due process once we've condemned the property because of immediate considerations. We have to bring it before the board so the board can listen to the condemnation issues and take any testimony from the owners or interested parties and the abutters, and either sustain, revoke, or modify our orders. At this point, we are looking for the board to sustain our orders and for us to go forward. If we cannot gain compliance, we'll be looking to bring this further into court. I'm not sure, but I think some of the family members may be here that want to give testimony, and I do know that some of the abutters are also here. And this is Ms. Gardner.
So the original complaint came in September 2012. At that time, it was complaining the son was living in the dwelling, burning mattresses, and there was debris all over the front lawn. I went out there, and conducted an inspection, and there was debris all on the front lawn. And so I went back, created an order letter, found out there was no electrical services to the dwelling, and at that time there was water services to the dwelling. I went back and hand-delivered a letter to Ross Bickford Jr., told him he couldn't occupy the dwelling until the electrical services have been restored, and in the order letter gave a time frame for cleaning up the yard. I also spoke with Karen. Karen's the oldest of 6 siblings, and because she was on care of the property and the assessors, I addressed her as well with the order letter. I went back out to the property. Ross agreed to clean up, and at that time there was significant progress made, and I did not return to the property. I returned to the property May of 2013, and it appeared that there was still no debris in the front yard. We later received another complaint that Ross was occupying the dwelling. So at that time, we sent another new order letter that nobody was to occupy the dwelling, found out that there was no water services to the dwelling, and gave some remediation plans in the order letter, how to restore some of those services. So that was June. I sent another order letter and spoke to Karen Smith again, who said she was working with Ross and her nephew to secure the dwelling and going through some legal process because the dwelling was in limbo at that time. We received another complaint in August regarding Ross occupying the dwelling and other complaints regarding that, including defecating and urinating outside. And we received a letter or a police report that an officer had gained access to the dwelling and found that there were no utilities, there was no toilet, the ceiling was falling down, and it was very unsanitary conditions inside the dwelling. So then, with those health and safety hazards, I went out on August 2nd and placarded the door with 2 officers, and at that time I observed a large amount of debris in the backyard and a broken toilet on the back porch with what appeared to be soiled clothing and feces on the back of the porch. I again sent a letter to Karen regarding no occupancy, and that she would have to secure the dwelling, and that we were having a hearing regarding the condemnation.
Is anyone,
Me, I'm not speaking.
1 second, sir. Any of the owners present, or
Me.
would you like to? If you're gonna speak, you have to stand at the podium. Introduce yourself.
Linda Taylor, I'm one of the daughters,
Okay.
and he's going to talk for the family.
David Leoncini, 14 Shaw Road, Carver. We're here to request either a stay of execution or continuance. As was stated before, the family is dealing with legal issues as far as the ownership, title, and will. It is in limbo at this point. We have every intention to right the wrongs that have been made clear to us. We personally have just found out that this meeting was taking place about 2 hours ago. So we feel that due process was not granted to the entire family, just to Karen, who is living in the state of Maine. For lack of a better term, there is lack of communication, so that was why we didn't find out until a few hours ago. And we would like the stay so that we can improve the property and do what is required by the town. I am a carpenter. I've physically been in the house. The ceiling that was stated that is collapsing is actually a drop ceiling, a suspended acoustical ceiling. It's not structural. It is suspended by basically sheet metal and wire. So that is really a small issue, but it's not a structural issue. The floors are intact. As far as any utilities, I don't know about what has happened. I've heard that the house has been looted of the copper, and I don't believe that that was a family member. I think that that was somebody else who got access to the house and stole that. What our intention is to restore the utilities on a prompt basis. We have the intent to restore the property to its original condition so that it's inhabitable, which is why we're requesting the stay of execution or a continuance.
All right. And Ms. Spaulding, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can stay there because I have some questions for you, sir.
Okay.
I think the issue is you got somebody living in there, and they're not supposed to be living in there.
Sure.
That's what, we can't do anything unless we condemn it. If we condemn it, then we can physically remove the person who's living there because they shouldn't be living there because there aren't any utilities.
Okay.
We can't, to be quite honest with you, I'm not gonna allow somebody to live in a house and go to the bathroom in the front yard when there are neighbors around.
Understood.
That's unacceptable to me.
Of course it is.
So, I don't think, and I certainly appreciate the position you're in. I would not want to be in your position. But I think if we condemn it, then we can take action against someone occupying the house. That doesn't prevent you from going in there and fixing it up. We'd like to see that.
That's what I'm doing.
Excuse me, sir, you can't speak unless I'm speaking to you or you're talking from the podium. You cannot interrupt the meeting. Thank you.
So what we would like to do is, as a family, deal with this family matter. We understand it's affected the public, but we would like to deal with it on a private basis. We would like some amount of time to deal with it, because this is the first notice we've been given for the condemnation. We'd like to address that.
All right.
I understand your concerns, but we would like the time, any time frame.
I certainly appreciate that, but what I just want to make this clear from where I'm sitting. In June, people were living in the house.
We didn't know.
And I'm not saying it's your fault in any way, shape, or form. But the first time I saw someone going in the bathroom in their front yard, if I lived across the street, I'd have a major problem with it. So I'm really putting myself in an abutter's situation. They do not care that you guys haven't had a chance to deal with this person who's living in your house. And they shouldn't have to, in my opinion. They don't, it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. And I'm not saying that you guys did. But the way I see it is we should condemn this house so we can remove the person who's breaking the law there.
Hell no.
Sir, you got one more chance, and then I'm going to ask you to leave. That's just the way I see it.
Could you explain to me what recourse the family would have once condemnation has taken place?
You could work with the health agent. And
Well,
they could figure out how to,
as far as the property is
you
concerned,
you don't lose it. We don't take it. It's just, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Spalding, but if we condemn it, then nobody can live there. We have the legal means to remove them, correct?
That's correct. Most of the time when we condemn the property, that what it means, it's uninhabitable and nobody can live there. Many times through the condemnation process, even though the condemnation stays in place, family members can go in there. We generally work out a work schedule with them that we know you give us a call. We're coming in there Tuesday from 8 to 5. We log it that you're going to be in there doing some work. You're there. You leave when you say you're going to leave and lock up the place, board it up, make sure nobody else gets in there. That's the only way a lot of family members, a lot of people can bring the property back into compliance, and we encourage that, and we'll do anything we can to help you in that process, helping you arrange for scheduling and everything else. Our main concern is, at this point, it's an unsafe, unsanitary dwelling unit, and nobody should be living there.
Okay, so what do you do if you get squatters in there?
We can't do anything until we condemn it.
Right. And
Then we can remove them.
So from here, if it continues to be a problem as far as habitation, we bring it to the next level of bringing it to court. Okay? In the bottom line is that the property has to be secured, it has to be boarded up, so no access.
is there any chance that we would have a matter of days to work this out in the family, and then you could carry through with your condemnation?
The property has already been placarded and condemned. What you can work out through with the other family members is how you want to bring it into compliance. And we've been more than happy to help in any manner that we can with that.
Isn't this hearing for the actual condemnation?
It is to sustain, the health department already condemned the property. This hearing is before the board to sustain it, revoke it, or modify it.
So essentially, our input is not going to affect the condemnation?
It's already been condemned, we're just sustaining it.
Correct, okay.
And I mean,
I understood. You've explained your position. I understand.
I have a great amount of sympathy and empathy for your position, and I understand that. But I'm trying to deal with the best interests of the people who live near this,
Of course.
you know? Any member of the board have any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say that the complaints about this have been going on. It's not really just been the last couple months, is that correct? Mm-hmm. I have them back September 2012.
Correct.
So I'm sorry that you haven't heard about it. There was miscommunication, but it's been going on for quite some time, trying to...
Right, my father just passed away this March.
Okay.
So he rightfully owned the house. So there was nothing we could do. And we just found out 2 weeks ago that we do have a right to do something about it. So it's like, and I never got any notification of any of this stuff.
Well, I think the health officer has expressed that they would
Yeah.
like to work with you to bring the house into compliance, but it is condemned, and really no one should be living in it.
Right.
That's the bottom line right now.
Do any of the abutters have any comments they'd like to make?
I do.
Sir, if you speak out again without coming up to the podium and being recognized, I'm going to ask you to leave. Are you an abutter?
Yeah.
Do you live there, or are you an abutter?
No, I'm a sibling. My name is
Not-
Ross.
Do you live next to the house in question?
I'm actually one of the siblings of the family that owns that house. And I can explain the situation.
Sir, can you just sit down till after I hear from the neighbors of the property? That's what I asked who to speak. Would any of the abutters like to address the board?
Sure. Hi, my name is Patricia Gilmore. I actually live across the street, and I'm new to town. I've only lived there maybe 2 months tops, but I've never seen anybody there. The only problem I've ever had is, why is this big, beautiful house sitting here unoccupied? Why is nobody taking care of it? Somebody needs to restore it and do something with it. And I'm not sure why we're having a condemnation hearing if it's already condemned, and what is the condemnation process then? Because it seems unfair to take away the value of this house from the family without them having any legal repercussions or even knowing that it's going on.
Well, again, if Ms. Spalding, if I speak out of turn or if I'm giving misinformation, please correct me, but if you don't have utilities going to the house, you can't live there.
Yeah, but
We
I've
don't-
never seen anybody living there. I've never seen any indication that anyone's going there. I've always wondered why nobody lives there and what's going on with it. And
That doesn't mean
it's
nobody
obviously
lives there.
not taken care of, but the only people I've seen come in and out of there are, police officers in the middle of the night, so
We
that's all
have
I've
reports of
seen.
people living there. We have reports from our health offices where we found evidence of people living there. That's what we're
Okay.
going on.
That's fine. I'm just asking, what is the process for condemnation then if it's already condemned, but this hearing is occurring now?
All right.
The process is it's required under the code that we then come before the Board of Health to review all the issues so that they have a chance to sustain, modify, or revoke it.
Okay.
And for the family or whoever's in ownership and the abutters have comment and provide testimony.
Okay.
Would any other abutters like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Jessica. I live directly next door at 25 Webster, and I would just like to say that I truly understand. Everybody has family issues, things happen, but it's really a huge issue for everybody living next door. I lived there for 3 years now, and we've tried running a business out of that house. I have business clients and people coming to the house who are verbally assaulted on the way out, who have seen unmentionable things outside, and it's costing other people a lot of money, a lot of time calling the police station, a lot of just aggravation that just it can easily be fixed. And everybody would help with that house too. Everybody wants to see that house be habitable and have normal people that want to take care of the house living there. I'm sure everybody would want to help too. So it's not like we're attacking anybody. We don't want to see anybody in a bad situation. We need that neighborhood to be a good place. There are a lot of children. So that's it. Okay.
All right. Sir, would you like to address the board now?
I really would. I really would. I grew up on that street.
What's your name, sir?
My name is Ross Bickford Jr.
Okay.
I grew up on that street, okay? I'm an honorable discharge U.S. vet, 100% service connected, 183 days in a battle theater, okay? I came back to that house 23 years later. I spent 18 years in Las Vegas. I spent 4 years in Grand Junction, Colorado. I came back to that house and found it completely destroyed. I was really upset. So when these people talk about who they see come in and come out,
Do you live there?
I don't live there, sir. I do not
What's
live
your
there.
address?
I've been in 17 Court Street. I've been at 55 Pine Street. I've been at
Where do you live?
Swiss
Where do you live?
Beach. Right now, I live with my son,
Can I have the address?
47 Swift Beach Road. I go to my parents'
Swift
house.
Where is that?
That's in Wareham. I go to my parents' house only to collect sentimental items out of there. In the meantime, I walk in there and I see all the copper ripped out of there. I'm like, are you serious? All piled up in the living room, in the dining room, all the copper piled up. I walk up the street to use my friend's phone, and in the time it took the cops to come there, 45 minutes later, all the copper disappeared. All these neighbors that seem to think that they see everything, How didn't they see that kind of stuff? A 20-foot long, 1.5 inch piece of copper laying in the backyard disappeared like
Sir,
that.
I appreciate your sentiment.
I
and
understand
I appreciate
if-
the story, but do
I
you have
no, I
anything
understand.
to
You-
add
you
to the
asked me to
condemnation?
speak.
I'm asking if you have anything to add to the condemnation hearing.
Do you have
any
I'm
reason why
adding
we
everything
shouldn't?
to you. When they ripped out the copper, they ripped out the water line
Sir.
that
it-
fed from the main water
I understand-
source
I understand
from the
that.
street
But
to
that-
where they had to
that
do an
doesn't have
emergency
any
shut-off.
Sir.
It was getting flooded.
Sir, it doesn't have any bearing on the hearing that we're having tonight.
It has everything to do
I
with why
don't
they're
agree with
saying
you.
it's inhabitable, electricity and water.
If you don't have copper pipes, you're not getting water.
People stole it. And everybody says, we want to help you. We want to
It's-
help you. I've been to everybody. I'm a vet. I've been up to Pulver Bencher. I've been everywhere trying to get help. Can't get help. Everybody wants to grab the house. Are you serious? The house is getting hit. The house has been a squawk shack. People urinating and shitting. I don't know whether they're urinating and shitting.
All right, that's enough of that.
I'm just saying,
But
sir.
I'm not going to tolerate that
It's
language.
not us. It's not
I don't
us.
care
It's
who
not
it
the
is. You're the one
Bickfords.
saying the words. I'm
It's
not
not
going to
the
hear that. We're
Bickfords.
not going to deal with that anymore.
It's not the Bickfords.
And we're not saying it's anybody. We're not pointing the finger at anybody. We're saying that this house is uninhabitable
Why?
because there's no power, there's no electricity.
Why?
I don't know why. That's
'Cause
not
it
my
got
job. Excuse me?
Because it got hit. People, kids,
All right,
whoever.
well, that
Robbed it.
doesn't, the reason why isn't why we're here.
Yeah, that's the reason we are here.
No, actually,
It's uninhabitable.
Right, it's uninhabitable. All right, now we're on the same page. So
Okay.
we're going to condemn this, or at least
No,
that's
you're
what I
not.
hope we are.
No, you're not.
All right, I don't think you understand the process here.
Because I've already cleaned it up.
Listen,
I've been
seriously,
down there
sir,
cleaning it up.
I appreciate your sentiment. I really do.
I've been down
And
there cleaning it up.
And I understand that the house has had a tough run.
Yeah,
But the way this is going to happen now is we're going to close the hearing, and then this board's going to take a vote.
yeah.
And after that vote takes place, the
How
health
much
agent's going to
time?
do exactly what she's supposed to do.
What?
Depends on the vote. We can't do anything till we take a vote. We can't take a vote till
Give
we
us
close
some
that
time.
hearing.
I've been down there.
It's too late. The time's run out on this one, in
No.
my opinion.
No.
Thank you very much for your comments. Would anyone else like to add anything?
Hi, my name's Jennifer Monahan. I live at 32 Webster Street, and I think I speak for everybody that is here that lives on that street. The house is deplorable, to say the least. To see somebody outside defecating on the side of your house. I have a 6-year-old autistic son. Some of the things that are being said over at this house are, you can't explain that to any of the children. There are 14 children that live on that street under the age of 15. The kids are afraid to walk to school because they get yelled at and screamed at. I watch the doors being left open in the house and the windows. We see wildlife going in and out of there. It's a hazard. If somebody goes over there and gets hurt, what happens? There's glass, there's trash, it's stacked, it's still water. You're talking about Triple E. There's water everywhere. You have the copper piping. There has to be mold in the house from the basement because the water was running. The water department was out there and shut the water off, and they came out with waiters on. It's deplorable. And again, I am so sorry. I've heard that the house has been beautiful and it has flowers and stone walls. We would love to see this house, but I have children that can't be watching as people defecate on the side of the house and have sexual encounters on the front steps. It's unacceptable. And it's sad. I feel bad. I really do. But we're raising children in this neighborhood, and it's a nice neighborhood. That's all.
All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to add anything else? Okay.
Sexual encounters?
Enough, sir. Sir! I'm going to close the hearing. I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we continue with the condemnation of 27 Webster Street, Middleborough, Massachusetts.
I think the word is sustain.
Sustain.
Just,
So the motion to sustain the condemnation
yes, I'm sorry.
at 27 Webster Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Knowlton?
I sympathize with the family. I've dealt with situations like this in my own family. It's very difficult, but we have a community here that we have to take care of as well. We also have our first responders that we have to make sure that they're safe going into houses should anything happen. The only way forward here is to condemn this, remove people from the property, and then give you the chance to work with the health department and restore this house. It can't happen the way it's going right now.
Any other comments? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. At 7:45.
I'd like to apologize to everybody in the room.
7:45, we have a meeting with Carter Fahey of Environmental Partners. Excuse me, folks, we're still having a meeting. 7:45, we're scheduled to have a meeting with Carter Fahey of Environmental Partners. We're going to review the edited version of the stormwater bylaw. Mr. Fahey?
Mr. Chairman, why don't I just give a little background on this?
All right.
We've been working on this bylaw for probably about a year. We thought we had it ready to go in the spring, and it was on the warrant, but when the board took a vote on supporting it, Selectman McKinnon had some concerns about it and voted no. So I met with him just before town meeting, and it seemed like he had some reasonable concerns, and I didn't want to keep it going forward without the full support of the board. So we did not bring it before the town meeting. We passed over it in the spring. And recently we had a meeting with Mr. Fay, Chris Beck, myself, and Selectman McKinnon to talk about his concerns. And the red edits are the changes we've made based on the concerns that he had, which we feel improve the bylaw, but still keep it intact and effective. So that's what's before you tonight, and I'll let, because we have a couple of new members on the board, I'll let Carter just give you an overview on where this is coming from, why we're doing it, and what it's trying to achieve. Carter?
Sure. Good evening. Carter Fay with Environmental Partners Group, hired by the town to help them in compliance with the EPA's stormwater general permit. The general permit was issued in 2003 by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and what it really does is it tries to improve the water quality in your rivers, streams, and ponds. And how the town is regulated is any stormwater that passes through your drainage system is supposed to have a higher level or a higher scrutiny by the town to make sure that anything that gets into your pipes and that leaves your pipes and drains into wetlands, ponds, and streams has water quality that's not going to impair its use as swimmable, fishable streams and ponds. Towards that end, the EPA has imposed on every town in, certain populated towns in Massachusetts, and that's about 237 of the 351 towns, are subject to this general permit. And the EPA has said in 2003 that every town that's subject to this permit needs to have a bylaw, a local ordinance bylaw that prevents illicit discharges, basically pollutants getting into your storm drainage system. So every town, all 237 towns are required to implement this bylaw. So a while back, DEP, the State Department of Environmental Protection Agency, got together with a bunch of towns and stakeholders and they came up with a model template to comply with the EPA's requirements. So, with tweaks and local influences and specific concerns, generally most towns by this point, 10 years later after the permit was issued, have implemented the bylaw. So this is something that's on EPA's radar screen, which towns haven't complied, which towns have. EPA comes by periodically, about one town a month, and does an audit to say, hey towns, how are you doing complying with your permit? The bylaw is one of those requirements that the EPA looks at. So in order to be in compliance, when EPA shows up at the door, it's incumbent upon the town to pass this bylaw so that they're in compliance with the stormwater permit. What's the gist of it? It's these 6 or 7 pages, which basically are saying, in essence, what the bylaw is trying to do is prevent people from tying in, hard piping in discharges into the storm sewer system, laundry, septic systems, tying into your storm drain system that's going to end up in your waterways. That's essentially what this is trying to do. Such that if it is, if the DPW in the course of cleaning catch basins, fixing manholes, find these discharges, something's coming out of it, they tested, geez, this isn't groundwater, this isn't, this is laundry detergent, or this is a septic system. They have the means, the town has the means then to go after the homeowner to say, we need to shut off this illicit connection so you can improve the water quality. I think the gist of Mr. McKinnon's comments were relatively minor. The biggest one, and I think it was a good tweak, was that he was worried that once this bylaw was written, the bylaw gave the Board of Selectmen the authority to then create regulations that would interpret this bylaw. And what he said, look, if there's any tweaking of this bylaw or any add-ons, have that as a separate bylaw, which limits the board's authority, but which basically says anything that that we need to do needs to go before town meeting and not simply at a Board of Selectmen's hearing. Other than that, I didn't have anything else to add. There's some minor tweaks that sort of restrict some of the interpretations of what stormwater is or isn't, which I thought were good tweaks. So open it up for any questions you might have.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I wish Mr. McKinnon was here for this one. I wish he was here for the last one, too, and the next one. And I certainly appreciate what Mr. McKinnon is trying to do. I couldn't agree more with the idea of any future tweaks in this coming before a town meeting rather than having the Board of Selectmen do it. But the one question I essentially have is, you said that essentially this prohibits illegal connections.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're crossing out the illicit connections section of it, which states, no person shall construct, use, allow, maintain, or continue any illicit connection to the municipal storm drain system, regardless of whether the connection was permissible under applicable law, regulation, or custom at the time of connection. I myself would like to see that stay in, and if you could speak to us why we should take it out, I'd be very interested in hearing that.
Sure. I think it was when we talked about it as a committee, we looked at prohibited activities under illicit discharges, and we thought that by in and of itself was enough authority to prohibit an illicit connection. So it was more or less redundant. What we were thinking of also was some previous permitted activity we were trying to think of examples where, you know, perhaps they had some signatory. We wanted to kind of get away from that of a previously permitted connection and simply say, look, if it's illicit, it's illicit, it's illicit. And let's not get into whether it's an illicit connection. If it's an illicit discharge, it's an illicit discharge. Get rid of it. So it was more of a simplification of the bylaw rather than having either or.
So if I had an illicit connection, and you guys came to me and said, hey, you can't do that, that's an illicit discharge, and I said, but I'm grandfathered in, that doesn't matter in your book.
Because if we see an illicit discharge coming from it.
But I have a permit that somebody signed 20 years ago that said I could do this.
Right, and we have the illicit discharge is any pollutants. Basically, we're the fact that the pollutants are coming out of that.
So that's an argument you can overcome with the illicit discharges.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. And Mr. McKinnon was, I think that he was really pushing for that, just to make really a simple. His idea was, you know, to keep it, and we agreed as a simplification of the bylaw.
Yeah, as long as you can shut it down, I don't care how you do it.
Right.
That was the one question that I had. Does anyone else have any questions?
Or just for clarification, Mr. Chair, if you could, so you can't just hook up to this thing.
Right.
I mean,
you can't tie directly into the stormwater system.
You can't, right, okay. So you can't tie into it, and if you are tied into it, you're responsible for what comes out of it. Yes. Okay.
Correct.
We do have a section under sump pumps that if you want to tie into it, say you had a basement sump for groundwater, you can directly tie into it as long as it's been registered with the town.
Meaning they want to know what exactly is flooding your basement and
Right.
what's pumping out of it.
Right.
Okay. And as far as, I think there was a moment where we were talking about following it upstream to find the source, which makes perfect sense. I think he was also making comments that, you know, sort of due process or something. If you have a concern over certain elements that are getting in there, you follow it upstream until you believe you found it. But, you know, you can't just continue upstream to see what else you might find since we're here, the equipment's here. I mean, there has to be some constraints.
Chain of evidence,
You can't
kind
just
of.
chain of evidence, and then once you find it, or if it's not there, you stop. You don't just continue to sort of poke around to see what you might find since you're here, kind of thing.
Correct.
Which I don't believe is in here, but I think that was sort of a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to sort of put it in perspective, the town has about 150 outfalls. And under the stormwater program, they're required over a period of time to test those outfalls to kind of see what's coming out of the outfalls. And then if they find something at any of the outfalls, then we're then required to kind of follow those 150 upstream.
What seems to be the most prevalent chemicals? Just the nasty stuff that you're finding. I mean, if you had like a top 5 list in a town like this, what is it? You mentioned detergent.
Detergent or fecal coliform, just excrement.
All right, so raw waste, raw human waste, detergent.
Animal waste. Yeah. I mean, people walking their dogs and, you know, it runs off into the storm drain and gets in that way.
Okay.
What do you do when you catch someone dumping a 5-gallon bucket of paint down the drain? Because I know a guy did that in my neighborhood.
I mean, if that's they're subject to a fine by not more than $300 under this.
Really, it's only $300?
It costs more than that for the paint.
Yeah.
I mean, that's under this bylaw. That's not necessarily, you know, what the EPA might fine them, or that's just under the local bylaw. But if, you know, if that was to be reported to DEP, they'd be cleaning up whatever they did, you know, and if they didn't refuse, it's that times 3 going forward.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Knowlton.
Forgive me if I might repeat some things.
Sure.
This came before the board just before I got on. I was aware of some of the things You say this permit was issued in 2003, and this would be maintenance on the permit.
Correct.
Is there a date certain when this is expected to happen, or is it just something that needs to happen so that the next time an inspection comes through?
Technically, it was supposed to happen by 2008. Towns, one of the reasons that this is EPA is in the process of rewriting the permit, reissuing the permit, and the town needs to, as part of that, when the town has to sign up for the new permit, which they're obligated to do, they have to check off on the block a few things. And one of those things is, what's the status of your bylaws? And so that's precipitating a lot of towns to be like, oops, we haven't done that piece of it. Because the EPA has let it known that, you know, when this new permit gets issued, you know, we're checking for how your mapping is going on, but we're also specifically looking at your bylaws. So even though the town can always say, well, you know, the EPA will come by once a month to any one of those 237 towns, we should be okay. They're going to be looking at all the permits, the applications coming in when the new permit gets reissued, and that's the time when they look at the blocks on the bylaws.
So how is this different from a stormwater management program? Is this, my understanding was that illicit discharges had to be incorporated as part of a stormwater management plan?
Right, so that each town, when they accept the permit, when they say to EPA, we want to be in compliance, we have to be in compliance, there are 6 or so demonstrations of how a town is in compliance with the permit.
Right. Education, public participation, right. Construction site, post-construction site, pollution prevention, good housekeeping for municipal operations, and illicit discharge. Right,
and the illicit discharge part of it encompasses going out there and testing your outfalls, and the other big piece is the bylaw. So that is sort of that, when you ask about where does this fall under, it's under that piece of the 6 pieces, that's the illicit discharge piece where this bylaw says that's the part of the stormwater management plan that
so that would be the only part of the plan that would be through the bylaws?
No. This is where, and I'm not sure if we want to go into that tonight, but basically the town is on the hook for, when the EPA issued that permit in 2003, there were requirements from the EPA to do 3 bylaws. One dealt with the illicit discharge. One deals with construction over an acre, and one deals with what happens after that 1 acre site's been constructed.
Post-construction. Okay.
What we were trying to do with the original, this bylaw, was basically say, we'll pass this, and then with the regulation authority that the Board of Selectmen now have, we'll put into the 1 acre construction and post-construction bylaws, we'll enact those as regulations enacted under the Board of Selectmen, so we wouldn't have to go to town meeting again for the extra bylaws. So after this is passed at town meeting, the next step is to get the other bylaw enacted, the other 2. How some towns have done it is they've done exactly.
We didn't, and we elected not to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
that was what we had thought originally, but then we realized that we didn't want to, ask for the authority to create those kind of regulations, that all this needed to go to town meeting. So we're basically doing them one at a time. So this is the first, there'll be 2 more that we have to do, they'll all go to town meeting.
Right. So we'd be basically approving this to go to town meeting.
Absolutely. This is for a warrant article to go to town meeting in the fall.
One of my big concerns with this is the cost. I believe you had estimated yearly maintenance of $50,000 for looking into tracking down illicit substances. And that seems like a pretty substantial amount of money. And I'm concerned about that. You know, the term unfunded mandate comes to mind for me.
And in fact, that was a concern of mine as well. And the original estimates was that this was going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to follow through on this. And fortunately, it's costing us far less than that. And not to say that $50,000 isn't a good deal of money, but compared to the original estimates, it's a lot less than we thought it would be. Not to say that's going to be the only amount that we're going to have to spend, but it's not anywhere near as much as we were afraid we were going to have to spend.
But it could still be more depending on the number of investigations that happen and the number of trackbacks.
That's true.
How does this affect, a few years back we had that massive flooding and we had people using sump pumps, pumping out their basements. Is this going to, we have a major storm, major flooding situation. Is this going to trigger all this kind of testing, an added cost on top?
I think to Mr. McKinnon's point, in his edit on page 1 of the bylaw, we'll prohibit illicit connections and unauthorized discharges to the maximum extent practicable. He specifically raised that point. If the town is in extremis, we're not going to go after. And I think the point is that the town is not going to go after or obligated to go after every, flooded homeowner for a pollutant that might have come from their home due to flooding conditions that are affecting a number of homes throughout the area. Yeah.
Anyone else have any other questions?
Well,
You guys mind if I ask one? Just to Mr. Knowlton, I just, if we don't track down the violations, who's gonna?
Agreed, but tell me, where's that money going to come from?
I don't know. Do we just let arsenic flow into the river?
We're level funding departments in town.
Then we should go after the people who are poisoning the river. But to say we can't afford to find the pollutants that are going into the river, I absolutely disagree with that. Maybe we can't afford to lock everybody up who breaks the law. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. But the river's the one that's gonna...
I believe that's essentially what I'm saying.
If we can't afford to track down the source of contaminants that are flowing into a river, that's breaking the law. Then we're letting criminals go free because we've chosen not to pay to find them. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because it doesn't make any sense to me that way.
I guess to your point, Mr. Chairman, when you look at tracking down an outfall, it's really not that complicated. It's not like you have an outfall and you've got to go 20 manholes away. And generally speaking, when you're looking at the town of Middleborough, if you've got an outfall, you may have 7 or 8 interconnected catch basins and manholes. So if you find something, you're coming up, you'll be able to, basically, you should be able to trace it the same day. And just as an example, in March, June and July, the town, I said, had about 150 outfalls. In the course of 5 or 6 days, we did 50 outfall inspections. And of the 50, we had 1 or 2 issues that were just above, and we need to retest those locations. So I don't think we're talking about, Pandora's box once we start testing, at least based on, and we were selecting those areas that were what we thought would be the most elevated or most high-risk areas. So it's just to give some perspective on the magnitude of the problem.
Ms. Telford?
No, good.
Mr. Quell?
But, bare bones, Charlie, 50,000, I mean,
where would that?
Well, you know,
Come from.
we've been taking it out of free cash in the fall, and you know, I assume we'll do it again. We've appropriated, you know, 2 years in a row. This will be the third year. So that's the plan. For now, that's what we've been doing. We've been funding it in the fall.
Okay.
I guess just to throw it out there, the town is working with other towns to look at grant programs. So we're looking
good at
at
writing
as well.
grants.
What's that?
So we're good at writing grants.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are stormwater grants out there, and the town is actively teaming with other towns to...
Who normally writes those grants, sir? In towns? Who do you find is normally writing those grants on behalf of towns? Who've been successful?
Sometimes I've written them, but, yeah, or watershed associations.
Regional planning agencies.
Yeah, regional planning agencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? Mr. Andrews?
So what happens if coliform's detected?
So you're in an outfall, you have coliform detected. So, you know, you have an outfall, so that goes to maybe a manhole or a catch basin. So you would test upstream structures, and you know, you'd look within those structures, see if there's any illicit connections within the structures themselves, to see if there's an illegal septic system hookup or what have you. Basically, if you end up at a catch basin and it's there, but it's nowhere around, you know, I think we'd probably attribute it to some pet waste, or we'd work with the DPW to clean out the catch basin. So I don't know if you had any follow-up.
One thing we're going to be doing, DPW, we clean every basin every year, at least once a year. So we're going to be updating that cleaning program, so the guys are going to be filling out inspection forms. As part of these inspection forms, it tells you all the details about that basin, whether there's any kind of illicit connection in there. So say year one, they go out, there's nothing in there. Year two, there is something in there. They're going to notice it right away. So we're going to be keeping track of all this information. That is going to cut down on Carter's time. I hate to say it, but for his case, but we're going to try and do as much in-house as we can. The one thing we can't do is the outfall sampling, because it requires taking certain samples and bringing them to a lab. But when it comes to the basins, we'll be doing that in-house and trying to cut off as much as we can there.
So are we dealing with illicit connections here, or are we dealing with contamination and outfalls? In my mind, there's two very distinct things that are being talked about here. And I keep hearing the term EPA and DEP used interchangeably from Mr. Fay, is that your name?
Yes.
And that sounds a little bit confusing to me, so I wish you could clarify your use of what's EPA and what's DEP.
Sure. This is a federal stormwater program. So EPA is the enforcement agency. DEP co-signs the permit, and it helps with some aspects of the permit compliance, but they're not the enforcement agency. Only the EPA would come in to do any kind of audit of a storm, to see if the town is complying with their stormwater program.
First question?
I'm sorry, what was the first question again? Sorry.
Are we talking about illicit connections or outfall contamination? There's the two separate things.
We're talking about both. DPW, if we see an illicit connection, whether it's a pipe that's been purposely put into a basin, then we need to put a stop to that. If we're talking about discharges, say someone in the middle of the night dumped a quart of oil or something like that in a basin, we go out there, we find a sheen on top of that water in the basin, then we need to track that down too. Two different things, but we are looking for both.
And is the bylaw written in a way that distinguishes between the two?
That was the reason we took out the section on illicit connections. We're trying to focus as much as possible on the discharges, because there may have been some permanent connections that we wouldn't permit today, and we're not going to get into that discussion as long as there's no illicit discharge being identified.
But
if we come upon a new connection where we know there is no permission granted, we're going to, discontinue that connection.
Yeah, that's a clear-cut thing. I'm worried about the not-so-clear-cut aspects of this. Illicit connection is pretty well-defined. If somebody has a particular area where everybody's walking their dogs and everybody knows one dog likes to go on top of another dog spot, and it's over on Pratt Farm, and then it leads up close to somebody else's house, are we going to start chasing up to that person's house because we see dogs in their backyard?
No. That's not what the intention is. And that's the very reason that we left the enforcement with the Board of Selectmen, because, this is about making sure we meet the intent of the law. But this is not, we're not looking just, the fine in there is purely for, compelling people to do the right thing. We're not looking to collect money. We're not looking to, get into people's, backyards. We just want to make sure that the water sources are protected.
And then the other thing that was spoken of briefly by Mr. Fay here was about the 1 acre, clearing of 1 acre.
That's to be dealt with in another day. That doesn't deal with this. This does not deal with that. But that's something we'll have to deal with. That's another requirement. But just like this, we're trying to write it and craft it so that it's sensible and, is something that we can locally support.
So at the end of the day,
so the same thing goes with that.
So at the end of the day, the EPA, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, the EPA has promulgated a regulation, and the town has hired you to help us to sort through this regulation so that it has the most fair or least impact upon the town, so the town can execute it with as much discretion as possible. But at the end of the day, we don't have a choice, we have to do it.
That's correct.
Miss?
Okay. So it sounds like from the testimony of Mr. Bay and yourself, what's going on is the EPA is asking to have the regulatory authority of the City Council handed over to the EPA.
No,
So at
no,
that
not
point,
at all.
we'll be responsible for the cost of the testing and enforcement of this regulation, plus any future regulations that come out. It's not clear what those costs are going to be. And it sounds like a really low level of contamination. We're talking about animal feces and detergent. Is this something that is appropriate to do?
No, I think you misunderstood. This is going to be locally enforced. We're not handing anything over to the EPA, but the EPA is requiring us to have this bylaw. It's part of our stormwater management permit. And it certainly is not, we're not talking about necessarily de minimis issues. If there could be sewer tie-ins or some other types of tie-ins that we absolutely want to stop.
Well, I'm sorry, but when Mr. Frawley had asked what the difference was in the new language, the response was that the authority would be given, the authority to make regulations would be taken from the Board of Selectmen and given to this agency.
That was in the original draft, and we took it out. So in our document tonight, Section 6 on the regulations is crossed out. So all we're doing is asking town meeting to approve the bylaw as written. Any further enforcement or any further regulation would have to go back to town meeting for approval. So there is no ability to pass regulations in this bylaw. The bylaw speaks for itself.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions?
What appeal process does an individual have if they feel like they've been?
You meet every Monday. They can come here any Monday and appeal to you.
To the board.
You are the ultimate enforcement. It says the enforcement rests with you or your authorized agents. So if people don't like the way, and basically the DPW is your agent in this matter. So if people don't like what we're doing, they can come right to you.
And we'd also be the agency that the DPW would report to if they feel like they need a vote of some sort?
Well, I mean, you know, again, you know, the DPW would be empowered to enforce this bylaw, and if anybody feels aggrieved by that enforcement, they can come to you. You're the ultimate authority on this.
So kind of like a Board of Appeal as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm just, if they don't agree with our decision, though, can they take it to a higher level?
Well, yeah, they could always do that, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Charlie, should we be voting?
No, you don't have to do anything. We just wanted to bring this back just to let you know, what we had done. We'd taken it off the warrant last spring. We've since worked on it, revised it, hopefully to the point where everybody can support it. And, so that'll be one of the, it'll be on the warrant as it was in the spring, and we'll go through it again when we have our public hearing on the article.
Has the Conservation Commission weighed in on this one?
I believe, were in a position to support it in the spring, and actually I surprised them by not letting them know that we had taken it off the warrant in the spring. But again, that happened at the last minute. So we will make sure that they're aware of it again.
All right. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Thank you. All right. 8 p.m., right on schedule. We will have a discussion and a vote regarding zoning for a registered medical marijuana dispensary.
My name is Hal Brown, 273 Trespequin Street.
How you doing, Mr. Brown? Nice to see you again.
Again.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time. My wife would say, don't do it, but I'm here. I was nervous about bringing this up, and because I didn't know what I was going to say, but then my phone went off, and I said, that's a good opening, because I can talk about that and apologize and say, that was Fats Domino. Okay? I guess if you read the Enterprise, I really did a lot of self-disclosing on Sunday about my wife and her struggle with cancer and her trying marijuana once and how it worked for 6 hours. She was miserable. I don't want to go into it. It'll make me kind of tear up. The nausea went away. Her appetite came back. She was able to put down some Ensure. Couldn't eat. She was wasting away. Being her, she had to go down in the garage to smoke it because lest her 92-year-old parents come over and smell it, she was appalled that they would find out, and they didn't even know what it smelled like, that their dear daughter, who they thought was this great goody two-shoes in high school, getting straight A's and everything, but she really wasn't. But that's another aside. A lot of you knew her from the library. I guess what I want to talk about, and Chairman Farley mentioned empathy, and that's really what I wanted to talk about. As a therapist, that's the first thing we learn about is empathy. And empathy is something everybody has. Even the most despotic people you could think of, you could go through any name, you can think of in current news and history, had empathy for their families, for their pet dogs. But sometimes empathy takes work. Sometimes you have to kind of look and say, what would I feel if I was in this person's shoes? If I had cancer and was on chemo? My wife was on the 3 drugs that work on nausea. None of them worked. I had to get up all night long because they were on different schedules. Zofran, clonidine, and lorazepam. None of it worked. She was wasting away. Like I said, she tried marijuana once. She got it from a friend who got it from the son, who was not a hippie, was, a good family man, a hard worker. He smoked marijuana. She smoked it. She got a little nauseous for about 5 minutes, and then her nausea went away for 6 hours. That's neither here nor there. If you want the facts about it, Sanjay Gupta just completely did a 180 on it. You can look that up. It was on a CNN interview. My point is that if you put a clinic, and frankly, I don't think we'll get it. They're just going to be 35 dispensary licenses in the state. But if you put it in an adult zone, and that zone, and I don't care that it's the middle of nowhere, ends up with an adult facility, would you want your loved one going to a clinic where they have to present a prescription, where they have to show an ID, and be surrounded by people that are going to some disreputable, seedy place? I just would say empathy sometimes takes work. Sometimes you have to extend yourself, inform yourself, and really work to put yourself in the place of somebody that is going through what somebody that's going to go to the trouble to get medical marijuana is going to go through. It's not going to be easy to get. There's a lot of research that's now coming out. You can do a good web search. By the way, if you look at, I think it's Research Google, to weed out all the other crap that's on Google, and then type in medical marijuana, you'll find the current research articles. Very interesting. But that's neither here nor there. It still gets down to empathy. Put yourself in my place. If my wife had wanted to get medical marijuana at that time, she would have had to get it illicitly. As I said in the Enterprise commentary, her oncologist, when she asked, kind of said, well, Betty, you know, I can't say go get it. But on the other hand, and there was this long pause and, you know, kind of, you know, a wink and a nod, and it was left at that. So that's really all I have to say is I don't think Middleborough is going to get it. If you do, I can't imagine you wanting an adult zone. It just seems like a wrong-headed thing to do. If it was your loved one or even yourself, I don't think you'd want them going to an adult zone if it had an adult facility. So really, that's all I have to say. And again, I'm sorry for Ain't That a Shame coming. Nobody ever calls me, so I always forget to turn it off. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Moving forward, I think it's a discussion we have to have. It's on the agenda, but I'd like this conversation to be more about zoning rather than the moral implications of medical marijuana use, because the facts are, at least in my mind, it's legal in Massachusetts. It's going to be zoned. There's 19 applications for Plymouth County, 16 applicants. You can have up to, I believe, 5 in Plymouth County. So there's going to be one in this area. There may be more than one in Plymouth County. I'm not sure, but it's something that we have to address. So that horse is already out of the barn. Medical marijuana is legal in Massachusetts. I'd like to stay off the legality of that topic if we could. I've done a fair amount of research on this, and if you'll allow me to tell you a little bit about what I've learned so far. On the frequently asked questions page of the medical marijuana and mass.gov, so it's a Massachusetts site. There's a lot of information out there, and it was hard for me to try to figure it out. Google research may be a tool I take advantage of in the future. I didn't know about it. But so the last question on the frequently asked questions page was, can cities and towns ban registered marijuana dispensaries? The Massachusetts Attorney General issued a decision that municipalities are not permitted to enact a total ban on registered marijuana dispensaries. However, cities and towns may adopt zoning bylaws to regulate such dispensaries so long as such bylaws do not conflict or interfere with the operation of the department's regulations, and may enact a temporary moratorium in order to study the zoning issues related to the development of dispensaries. So we have to come up with some type of zoning. We can't prohibit it. That's the bottom line from that I get. As we move forward, I just want to read some statistics from the Marijuana Policy Project at 236 Mass Ave. in Washington, D.C. This is regarding crime around dispensaries. The UCLA study exploring the ecological link between crime and medical marijuana dispensaries in October of 2011. In what is likely the most comprehensive analysis of the relationship, or lack thereof, between dispensaries and crime, researchers from UCLA, funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, found the density of medical marijuana dispensaries was not associated with violent or property crime rates. In their conclusion, the researchers said, these results suggest the density of medical marijuana dispensaries may not be associated with increased crimes or that measures dispensaries take to reduce crime, i.e. doorman and video cameras, may increase guardianship and such that it deters possible motivated offenders. Another Regent University study in 2011, researcher Mara Scher of Regent University looked at the perception of crime and medical marijuana dispensaries' impact on crime among the residents of Denver neighborhoods with varying socioeconomical profiles. In so doing, she found that most crimes, including robbery, vandalism, and disorderly conduct, increased in Denver from 2008 to 2009. However, in areas with 1,000 feet of a dispensary, rates were down for most types of crime, including burglary, larceny, and a 37.5 reduction in disorderly conduct citations. In her conclusion, the author notes, it appears that crime around medical marijuana centers is considerably lower than citywide crime rates, a much different depiction than originally perceived. All of this information that I'm reading from, I'm going to be given to the secretary, and it'll all be included in the minutes for the meeting. So anything that I read is certainly public record. I spent Saturday night sitting by the fire, going over 105 CMR from the Department of Public Health, 725, the implementation of an act for the humanitarian medical use of marijuana. It's not nearly as exciting as it sounds. I think in order to have a decent conversation about this, we should read this. I'm not going to read it over the microphone, but there's just so many things that are in here that it's, I mean, to say it's a heavily regulated facility would be an understatement. The definitions, registered qualifying patients, registrants, registration cards, independent growers, written certification, visitors, certifying physicians. There's quite a bit to this. Registration of qualifying patients, responsibilities of personal caregivers, hardship cultivation registration. That's a term we should pay attention to. Registration of registered marijuana dispensaries. There's a couple interesting things. Looking at the application requirements. Right now, like I said, there are 19 applications in Plymouth County. None of them have determined a location yet, and they don't have to until farther along in the process. So, is someone coming to Middleborough? We just don't know yet. But like I said, I think we have to do something before that chance gets there. And to be honest with you, my opinion as it stands now is I think we may miss an opportunity for a business if we don't properly zone this. From what I've seen, the research I've done, I don't think a medical marijuana dispensary would be such a bad idea if properly located in the town. Saturday morning, I had the opportunity to go visit the Slater Compassion Center in Rhode Island, which is a medical marijuana facility in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island. I was thoroughly impressed with their nondescript building. You'd never know what it was unless you walked in there. And the thing is you can't get in there unless somebody buzzes you in and you have all the proper documentation. That's just to get into the dispensary. I spoke at length with the retired state police lieutenant colonel, who's the head of their security. They gave me a tour of the facility. Apparently I'm fairly naive in this aspect of life, and it looked to me like one of the drug things you would see on a movie, but it was you could eat off the floor in there. It was a medical facility in every sense of the word. Everything was clean, everything was neat, it was well lit, nondescript. It was in my mind, it was a fascinating visit and a very impressive facility. And it wasn't anything like I had any perception of. And all that's neither here nor there. We're talking about zoning here in Middleborough. But does anybody else would like to address this or talk about this, or should I just keep on going on?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Elton?
I also read from front to back that Mass Law 105, Section 725, and a couple things struck me. First of all, the registration process. There has to be an order from a doctor who is registered with the state. That registration is checked and renewed every year. Then the patient has to have a registration which is checked and renewed every year. And then all of the employees, anyone to have anything to do with the dispensary, have to have a registration which is checked each year. That's a threefold registration to monitor the use. The second thing were the security measures. And there are particular zonings in the state law which pertain to proximity to schools and businesses and daycares. The thing that is actually most important to us tonight when we're looking at this, I felt, was that the law prohibits us from banning the facility. If we were to zone this facility so that it could only go into that one area in Middleborough that we were discussing, the access to that area would, in essence, present a hardship to the business and to the people that are trying to obtain the medicinal marijuana. And it may be grounds for someone to say that we are standing in the way and prohibiting their business by backing them into that corner. I would hope the board would think about that. That could be a legal ramification. And it may also bring light to other businesses there that could suffer from the same situation. I would support zoning under general use, because even under general use without the A, you're going to need a special permit because of the very nature of this facility, in that it has an agricultural part and a production part. It's not going to just be a business. A GU zoning would keep it from downtown. The state zonings would keep it away from sensitive areas like schools. And we would get a special permit from zoning as well, but it wouldn't pigeonhole the company into one area where they have actually no access. That's all I have.
Just so I guess we're clear, the Board of Selectmen has absolutely no power to enact any type of zoning law. Whatever law comes up as a fruit of this discussion has to be voted on at town meeting, and the town ultimately decides what type of zoning bylaws we're going to allow or not allow in our town. So this isn't a vote that we're going to be opening up a dispensary tomorrow or anything like that, just so we're all clear. And we're asking the planning board to come up with some type of recommended zoning bylaw through this. Charlie, through you, or to you, is there any type of, could we have like a medical marijuana zoning bylaw committee, or?
Well,
I'd like to at least listen to the rest of this conversation after it leaves this room.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were going to do that, then what you would do is you would vote a moratorium, which would include having some sort of study, or at least that's what other towns have done, right? The idea here was that, if you zoned it, then you wouldn't have to take that step. You would just, propose a zoning. Now, let me be clear. You don't, right now, according to Bob Whalen, our building commissioner, our existing zoning would allow it anywhere a retail use is allowed. So it's not like it isn't possible right now for these places to be cited, but they could be cited anywhere there would be a retail use permitted, which is just about everywhere. So you know, the theory behind this was to, you know, designate it in a certain area. You know, but right now, it is allowed in all retail, so.
I think it says in the law, 500 feet from a school.
Yeah, with those restrictions placed by the state.
But yeah, that's another thing that the law clearly states. It has to abide by all rules and regulations and local ordinances, so.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Noble.
First, let me say that you know, I completely empathize with what Mr. Brown was saying. I don't think you'll find too many people who haven't had their lives touched by cancer in one way or another. But I do feel this comes down to a safety issue. The state has said this is okay. The town has voted and said, you know, this is something that we want to consider. So it does come down to finding the right location. I appreciate the information you've given as well. It makes me wonder that your studies on lower crime rates around this, could it be because there's less crime because they chose isolated areas for these facilities? I think we need to be very careful about that. In my mind, the adult...
I'll give you all the information I have.
The adult part of this makes sense to me. This is something we want to keep away from children. We want to keep it away from schools, daycares, things like that. You know, this might not be the ideal solution to it, but I think for us to be prepared so that when someone does come to town saying, you know, I've got all my permits, I've got my licenses, I'm ready to set up shop, that we have an area where we can welcome them, welcome a new business into town, but still ensure the safety of our community.
I guess I'm up. Yeah, well, first of all, Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for your research and taking the time, traveled down to Rhode Island, and gathered a lot of stuff. And came here very prepared. And I found it all very interesting what you brought up. And I was glad that you started with, you know, the legislation and the ruling you got from the Attorney General's office, because, you know, when I first heard about this, people are asking me, well, what are you guys going to do about it? And my first reaction was, I don't think there's anything that the Board of Selectmen does about it. You know, it doesn't violate zoning, it doesn't violate state law. Therefore, I think that if somebody wants to rent a commercial piece of property to an individual who wants to do this, it is what it is. So we talk about a moratorium, which I guess the Attorney General is saying you do have some area here as a town where you could study it and see how it might impact your town. We do this with a lot of things, whether it be something as broad as casino or building a new police station. We want to see what we can do, how we're going to do it, and what have you. But normally those committees report back. They have some sort of direct influence on a decision that needs to be made by maybe that committee or some other committee. But a moratorium, I guess my first question would be, well, what if something came up during that time frame where we took a look at it, we didn't like something, it doesn't sound like it really has any teeth to it in the end, why bother? You know, I'm not trying to kind of poo-poo the idea, I'm just saying, you know, if we're going to put together something that would take a look at something a little more in depth, I'd like to know that whether or not, if they find something that is of concern to somebody on that, or somebody within the town, what could be done in the end. So, I would probably contribute the drop in crime in the general area of these dispensaries based on what I understand to be normally a police presence during many of the hours of operation. And I do believe that there is areas in here that police details can be required and usually are paid for by the dispensaries. I think that police presence usually do bring crime rates down in that general area. Why wouldn't they? It's a show of force. So my understanding is, you know, a lot of these dispensaries, those who are proposing them have already come forward and saying we are more than happy to provide funding for police details to stand in front of these things. I know it certainly works in liquor stores to keep underage buying down and other things and what have you. So I guess moving forward, it's just going to be interesting to see, you know, really what this board
you know, where our stance is. I think at this point, we're taking let's just be clear what we're taking a vote on tonight, if anything, is just to recommend sending the article forward.
Yeah, I think so, whether or not you would support this article to move it forward. Like I said, right now, your zoning allows it in any area that retail is allowed, which is just not everywhere, except for, you know, residential zones. But, you know, do you want to restrict it further? And that's what this bylaw does. And that's the question before you, how you want to proceed.
But restricting it further, as I understand it, has to fall within certain restrictions on the state law. I mean, whatever we do can't in any way inhibit this business based on state regulations that have already been passed, as far as I understand that letter from the Attorney General's office. So
yeah, you can't prohibit it.
We can't really do, there's certain tweaks we can put in there, and I'd probably like to make that more known. Maybe that's something the moratorium could do, is just make it more known to people what options we have to tweak this to maybe appease some of the people who might have concern on it. Other than that,
yeah, I think
open for business.
It's up to you if you'd rather consider a moratorium and some sort of, you know, amount of time to study it and just how to zone it. That's the other option. That's not what this says, but if that's what you prefer, we could you know, try and draft something up like that. It depends on what you want to do.
Okay. Mr. Chair. Through you to Selectman Dalby, would a moratorium give us time to get an opinion from council on your particular issue?
I'm sure it would. If we have a moratorium, when is it brought up again for zoning?
It's up to you. I mean, you could attempt to do it for the spring. I mean, obviously, it's got to go to a town meeting.
Right.
So the next
that would give us
town meeting would be
spring.
in the spring. So you could state it so that the moratorium would be until the spring town meeting, and you know, and you would want to put together a study committee to make a recommendation for the spring town meeting, I would imagine.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Knowlton?
Relying on your knowledge of this as you've researched.
No personal hands-on knowledge whatsoever.
Your academic studies of it. Would a moratorium put us in any danger of, we all know the wheels of state government grind very, very slowly. I'm not worried about someone showing up in a month. Would you think that a moratorium to the spring would still put us ahead of somebody showing up in town with their licenses and with all their permits and saying, I'm ready to have a business?
I would, after we hear from everybody, I would fully support a motion to have a study committee put together so that we can go to Springtown meeting with a proposed zoning bylaw to regulate a medical marijuana dispensary. I think that would be the best possible scenario for the town. It's my own personal opinion.
Right. I just don't want to have a business come to town before we're ready to deal with them. And
I'd hate to.
My thought is that, you know, the wheels are going to grind slow enough on this that a moratorium is not going to put us.
I believe the term they use at the State House is excruciatingly slow.
Excruciatingly slow, yes.
But on the other hand, too, I'd hate to miss an opportunity.
Exactly.
You know,
I don't want to do this and then in December have two different businesses come to us and say, you know, we're ready, let's go.
As
we
part
have to
of
say no, and they go somewhere else.
As part of a proposal, we were also allowed a local tax, and we're allowed to charge fees as well. So there is a lot to this. So, Mr. Brown.
Through the chairman to Mr. Knowlton, if I may. I don't know if you'd say point of information, but I did learn in my research that, oops, sorry, dropped the pencil, that children will use medical marijuana. If you read the Sanjay Gupta article, you'll notice that he's a neurosurgeon, with a child who had intractable, daily, frequently during the day, grand mal seizures, I believe it was. The only thing that worked was medical marijuana. So children, as research shows that some of these diseases that they contract are responsive, will be going into that adult zone, if that's where you decide to have it. And that's all I had to say, and thank you for letting me interject there.
Just on that note, Mr. Brown, you're absolutely correct. In an article published on August 16th of this year, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie agreed Friday to give chronically ill children easier access to medical marijuana. That's in New Jersey.
Mr. Chair, I believe there is an extra level of oversight on that children under 18 need 2 doctors' recommendations for this, whereas an adult over 18 only needs 1. So that's just one extra level of oversight.
Mr. Noel?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Brown, I certainly do understand that children would be patients. I don't think children are going to be driving to the dispensaries to pick up their medication. I think that's something the parents are going to do and then bring it back to their homes. So I still have that concern about keeping this away from children and not just the patients.
Ms. Fowler?
I know there's a lot of concerns around issues such as this and for the community as a whole. In the last couple of weeks, I've sent you a lot of documentation, research documents, the regulation itself that the DPH passed, the answers and the questions and answers pages, and some additional information that the health boards associations have been working on in the past year. What makes it very difficult for the health departments is that quite often the Department of Public Health will work on a regulation or an issue like this, and when they do pass it, it now becomes available. Most recently, I'll give you 2 examples. One was the body art regulation, another is the massage. It was like kind of passed on a Friday in front of the press, and by Monday we had people beating at our doors. Not to say that that process will move as quickly on an issue such as this, because there's a bit more required under the application process through the state. But of the information that I sent you, there's a lot of background and educational information. There's a PowerPoint. I would suggest to the board to put on, to look at this also as you sit there as the Board of Health, because this is a Department of Public Health law that came out. And perhaps we could have a workshop on it after you've gone through some of the background information, and we have it so that the public can get as informed, because I think that's very important. As we all know, everybody has to understand this subject. Included in some of the information was a draft local Board of Health regulation. Not that it's perfect or anything else, not that we can't tweak it, but it was a beginning draft put on by some of the Massachusetts Association of Boards of Health and the Mass Health Officers Association and their legal staff. So it's something we should take a look at and consider and see how we can modify it, and how sometimes through the public education and information process, including the administration education process, there are questions that come up that can be addressed through these regulations, that sitting as the Board of Health, if we modify this regulation to appropriately fit our community and answer the questions for our community, you can pass this regulation. And it can work alongside with a zoning regulation or in place of it, or whether you need zoning rather than this. It's something, at least it gives you some background and other thought processes to go along with it. So I would like to add that to it. And if I'll try and keep sending you the information as I get it. As I said, we've been looking at this issue for close to a year now, and even the boards of health associations that I work through, they get the information from the state at the last minute, and now we're in a reactionary period. Would I prefer the moratorium at this point? Yes, because I think it would give us all, administration, Board of Health, Health Department, and the public, time to look at this subject, determine what is appropriate for our community, and then address it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Diane Stewart. I live on Carmen Park Drive. I have 2 points. The first one, I think if the board chooses to, or the town would choose to zone it in a very specific location, I think it should be on a public transportation route, maybe the GATRA route or something like that, so that people who don't have their own vehicles would still have access to it. Second, I think when you're talking about public safety and a medical marijuana dispensary, I think it's a little preemptive unless you have some statistics to show that it wouldn't be safe unless you put it way out where we put the adult entertainment zoning. We have how many pharmacies downtown? I don't know anybody that's died of an overdose from pot, but there are plenty of people that die of overdoses from prescription medications. Medical marijuana is legal now, just like any other prescription medication you get at a traditional pharmacy. I guess absent some sort of statistics that show that it would increase the crime rate or be somehow more harmful to residents, I'm not sure why we would not allow it in places where we have traditional pharmacies.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Hi.
How you doing?
Okay. Just want to point out, we are talking about the fastest growing industry, and the town should actually be competing to get these businesses here, not trying to stop them from coming here. They're not going to go to places that are hostile to them, and having a moratorium or trying to zone them into somewhere where they don't have access is going to stop these businesses from coming here. The town has it's down from 7.7 to 7% unemployment rate, and 62% of the town's voters voted to pass this law. So to try and stop it from happening now when it is going to happen, all the town's going to do is lose out on the money that it could potentially make, and it's going to happen anyway.
I just want to be clear that in no way, shape, or form am I trying to stop this from happening.
I know you're not. I hear what you're saying.
I don't think the temperature of the board is to stop it.
A moratorium
but we want to try
is
to
a
get a good
horrible
grasp
idea.
on it so that we can have passing a bad bylaw is a lot worse than not passing any bylaw in my mind. I think by the spring, I think we're well within a timetable. We're not passing it. We have the opportunity to pass a moratorium for up to a year.
Right. But if you take that opportunity, you're going to lose a bigger opportunity.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about it'd be very difficult for us to get an article on fall town meeting at this point. It'd be very difficult. I think at fall town meeting, we would be rushed. I think at spring town meeting, we could make an informed decision. And that is the only type of decision I'm in any rush to make, an informed one. That's just my opinion, and I'm only one member of the board.
It sounds to me like you sort of have an idea of what's going on. You understand that these are medical facilities. You understand that this is a great business opportunity. You understand what the potential economic repercussions are for the town, that we could be bringing in a lot more money. And I believe this town's budget stated just last month, right, when it was passed, that the hope would be to bring it down to where you could actually raise taxes by less than 2.5% because there would be more income coming in.
That's our hope every year, but.
Yeah. But we could actually take steps to get there instead of trying to hinder businesses from coming in.
The way I read the law.
Because these people are not going to want to cross every red line. They have to go through so much already. They're going to go to towns that are friendly to them. And if the town is hostile and, does everything in their power to prohibit or postpone these businesses opening, they're going to go to towns that are friendly, that will allow them to open. They're not going to wait around for people to make their minds up when the voters already spoke.
And I understand that, and I think that's what we're trying to do.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I actually have the article that Mr. Brown referenced to by Dr. Gupta. And I recommend anybody read it. I imagine if you Google Sanjay Gupta from CNN, you can find it. But there's some very interesting statistics in it. And, well, there's a lot of them. I don't want to read the whole thing to you.
So do you, sounded to me like there might be more support for a moratorium and a study to report back at the Springtown meeting? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'd like to have, and again, that's just my opinion, but I'd like to have an article to vote on at town meeting in the springtime.
Right, but do you want that with or without a moratorium until the springtime? Is my question. Because right now it's zoned for anywhere there's a retail use in town. So unless you pass a moratorium right now in October, that means that there's no restriction except for wherever there's retail use. If you want to wait until you have a study to determine how you want to regulate it, then I think you need a moratorium until the study reports back and makes a recommendation at town meeting in the spring. But I think those are your options. Or you decide to do something right now and just pick a district.
Mr. Chair, the difference between the GUA and the GU could get...
You're asking the wrong guy.
Wrong person. What, from my understanding...
GUA is very narrow, GU
right,
is very broad.
Right. General use, and you still have to go to the board, the zoning board of appeals.
That's what you did.
Because
I think if you choose the format that was prepared for tonight, you would make it by special permit.
So it'd be special permit, general use adult district.
That's what that draft says, yes.
Yeah.
But a GU would not limit it to just that district, correct?
Yeah, GU would be any GU area.
Which is outside of downtown, as I understand it?
Mr. Chair, I'm getting some updated information that says that the mid-September would be the first step of the permitting process, and that the state expects permits to be issued, final permits to be issued in December, which would make it, if we do a moratorium, they would be ready before we were ready. And there's also apparently from the Boston Globe saying that there have been statements made that towns who are doing moratoriums are going to miss out. So just information to consider.
Well, regardless, though, I think what the chairman was getting at is we don't have much of a chance of getting this on a fall
No, I think
meeting.
if you decided something tonight, that your warrant doesn't close until Friday. So you could put an article on the town meeting warrant for this fall. That's what this draft is designed to do.
How come no one from the planning board's here? Or planning department's here, if we're talking about the zoning bylaw?
Because you're the ones who decide what's on the warrant.
Well, I think it would have been really nice to have somebody from the planning board or planning department here. Because, I mean, I'd like to explore the idea of an industrial zone, or, I mean, if...
Mr. Chair, not to sound redundant, but I'm going to say it again. Wouldn't GU cover that without the A, without cornering them into just the one district?
I don't have the zoning map here.
I have emailed back and forth with the planning board, the planning department, and that was their recommendation as well.
Yeah, GU?
GU, it will keep it out of the downtown business zone. The state's stipulations law will keep it away from schools. So it would keep it into a more commercial industrial area.
Oh.
I mean, unless you want to pick the address they can go to, and that's it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, again, I will ask the Board of Health to look at this as a public health issue, because it is a public health law that came through, and ask you to think about having a workshop meeting. We could do it a half hour if that's all you want to allocate towards it. But it allows some education of the public and allows you some time previously to look at the proposed regulations, draft regulations for local boards of health that you can pass prior to zoning, in place of zoning, whatever. As the Board of Health, this will be your regulation. So I'm asking the board to consider having a workshop and at least review some of the information that I have sent.
What Jean is saying is that as a Board of Health, you have many of the same powers as you would in passing a zoning regulation. In fact, you probably have more. So
You have a lot more.
Yeah, so you you don't necessarily have to, what she's suggesting is you don't necessarily have to pass a zoning amendment. You could probably accomplish the same thing through a Board of Health regulations if you so chose.
And what I'm saying is, irregardless, if you put it on for zoning, it doesn't preclude you from still looking at it as a public health regulation, a local regulation that can work hand in hand, complement one another, support one another. Or if the town opts not to have it passed under zoning, the regulation still gives you some guidelines and still gives the community whatever protection they need from a public health standpoint. Because that's what this is going to be regulated under. We have to have the local permits and regulate it under public health. So please, look at my information. I'd appreciate it.
Question, Mr. Chair. If we had a study group and we were able to get this article on fall meeting, is there anything that precludes the findings of that study group from being read at town meeting? As has happened in the past with other issues.
I'm leaning towards recommending an article for town meeting to zone it in a GU group and go forward with the study group if we have to change it in the spring.
Okay.
We can also amend it through Board of Health regulations.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Or you might just want to put an article on now for zoning and then consider what Jean's suggesting, which is looking at the potential for a Board of Health regulations. You may find you don't need a zoning amendment, and you may just pull the article or pass over it.
That's what I would
So keep your options open.
I would certainly entertain that motion after we hear from the rest
From
of
what Jean has said.
Yes,
that
I
gives us
agree.
much
So
more
we can do a
flexibility.
GU and then just.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Just to remind the board, you could get the warrant, an article onto the warrant for this Friday. You would have another 6 weeks to conduct study groups, to do research, and you could read an amended version of the warrant or of the article at town meeting and ask that the town pass that amended one instead. You're not really just limited to the next 4 days to, it's not the end all be all, so.
Thank you.
Here I am again. From the sublime to what you may think is the ridiculous. I just forgot what the sublime was. Oh, I really believe you should have some workshops and try to get a couple of doctors, maybe an oncologist and a neurologist or a GI specialist familiar with this, to come to a workshop. That was a sublime. The ridiculous is a little outside the box. You're giving me that look. If you put it, say, in Reedy's, and require, I know you're shaking your head, and required video, CCTV, closed circuit TV, 24 hours a day, that they paid for, monitored.
It's already required in the regulations.
I rest my case. If you have it monitored 24 hours a day and you think about downtown, paid for, in the middle of downtown, these little cameras up here are, as you know, incredible. They can zero in on, and they can videotape and talk about downtown disreputable characters and crime. So that was my sort of ridiculous, but thinking out of the box, I thought, you're not going to have CCTV covering downtown anytime soon with our budget. So just a little weird idea.
The reason I was shaking my head, if I may, is because I believe the early childhood education is within 500 feet of Reedy's. I don't think we can put anything in that general area.
Concept.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could be in the back.
I understand. I understand. No, I read the security measures that are required, and yeah, it's Fort Knox. I agree.
Yeah.
Anything else? We gotta wait until Mr. Clark comes back anyway, so.
So,
Oh, hey, we can talk about this. We'll invite Mr. Quillen when he gets back. But one of the applicants in Plymouth County has invited the Board of Selectmen and the Chief of Police down to visit the Slater Compassion Center in Rhode Island too, if you want to take a trip down there and see what we're talking about. Because it really, for me it was nothing like what I expected. I didn't really have any idea what one of these places is like anyway, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I'd certainly recommend it. I don't care what your opinion is of it now, but I think it'd be, I would recommend it to learn more about the whole issue.
Okay, so then I think it will modify this article to under GU say ZBA and then under GUA say N. And therefore it would be permitted in the GU districts or district with a special permit. And then we'll have that on the warrant, and then we can consider a Board of Health regulation.
That sounds good to me. Okay.
So moved.
I suppose
We gotta wait for Ben. Yeah.
Because he's here, he's not getting out of this vote.
And in the meantime, Mr. Chair, should we schedule the seminars, or?
I think we should certainly do everything we can, like I
With the
said,
Board
to
of
make an
Health?
informed
Yes,
decision.
yes.
All right. So I'd entertain a motion to change our table here to GU under special permit from the ZBA.
So moved.
What did I miss?
We're going to, we'll change the
Hold on a
table
second.
to allow it in the GU zone rather than the GUA zone.
Okay.
By special permit. And then we'll consider whether or not we'd rather do the regulation through a Board of Health regulation.
So it still goes to town meeting.
Well, it'll be available to go to town meeting, yes.
We'll be available to go to town
Yeah.
meeting.
You may
It
decide
doesn't-
that you have a different way of doing this through the Board of Health regulation. You may choose to do it that way.
And we can still do a study group in the meantime. So really, I don't think we're limiting ourselves with this vote.
Well, this actually goes to, actually, what you'd be doing today also is referring this to the planning board, because they make recommendations on all zoning articles.
Okay.
So they would have a hearing and discuss it.
I will second.
All right, I think we came to a pretty good compromise here. And most importantly, we're going to give the town the opportunity to decide its own fate. And hopefully we're going to give the town as much opportunity as possible to learn more about this issue as well before we come to a final decision. So with that, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. That passes. All right.
Before we
Mr.
do,
Albee?
Mr. Chair, again, I'm going to come back to, are we going to have someone coordinate with the health department?
Yeah, we'll get some times and have a workshop.
Okay, thank you.
I'd volunteer Mr. McKinnon since he's not here, but I don't know if that would actually work. So, all right. And we already did the town manager's report. So we're on to correspondence. Mr. Quell, would you like to go first?
Okay. Well, hold on to your chair, but the Plymouth County Advisory Board is having another meeting.
All right.
So, and, I remember when I was first appointed on this, somebody asked the question, how often do they meet? And I think, Charlie, you chimed up and said, very infrequently. And, I've been waiting and waiting. My expectation, I think anybody's would be, if you have been operating in the red for a prolonged period of time, that would probably indicate that you should have meetings more frequently until you work your way out of the financial doldrums and get yourself back in the black, and then you can maybe have less meetings. So I don't understand why we don't meet more frequently, but if I could have permission of my colleagues on the board, I'd like to bring that up at the next meeting, why you feel that operating in the deficit would make you feel like you don't need to meet much. Because I certainly would like regular updates. I can tell you that from working in the private sector, and I've worked in very large companies, if there's a problem in a certain department or something going on, well, there's more meetings until it's fixed. So I'm glad to see we're having one. It's going to be in Halifax. I certainly will make myself available to the chairman if you feel like you want me to, again, bring back what I got and do a sort of quickie pseudo presentation on the sort of financial state of affairs of the county. I think we're certainly, you're entitled to it since we get whacked with a bill at least once a year. It's a pretty sizable bill that I don't believe is going to ever go down. So there's that. And we have some literature here from Positive Effects LLC. I just want to say, I think this is a fabulous idea. Being in a household of 6, 4 children, we certainly do have certain amounts of, I wouldn't say wasted food, but we really just sort of compost it out behind our house and try to use it for the family garden as best we can. But to give this to, individuals in the town, a container that is, enclosed in a way that it doesn't give off odor, it's protected from the weather, and you can just set it out there and they come and they can take this stuff away. It seems very easy. I think this is something we should support. I think it'd be great to be able to say that we're a town that goes out of our way trying not to waste any food. Okay? It just makes too much sense. So I certainly would like to see whatever assistance we can give this program to speed it along and whatnot. Or even to invite these individuals to come and do a presentation, Mr. Chair, I think that'd be a fabulous idea. With that, thank you very much.
Mr. Knowlton?
Number 4, the Conservation Commission is currently looking for people for the stewardship program. I believe this is at Pratt Farm.
Yep.
So interested parties are asked to call the Conservation Committee office, or you can email them through the town website. And I'd also like to comment on the positive effects, number 6, that Selectman Quell was just commenting about. Like you, I have a on-again, off-again compost pile in the backyard that we work on for gardening. It does sound like an interesting idea, although I do note that they didn't say anything about the cost. And I did hear, after exploring their website a little bit, there was a $20 a month per house cost, which seems like a decent amount. Well, it seems like an expense. And I would like us to get more information about it. It definitely sounds like something that would be a positive step for the town, but again, I'm just worried about, what the cost would be. And that would be all I have.
Ms. Delpy?
I was going to mention the Pratt Farm as well. Yeah. Great place. If you can volunteer some time, please contact them. And just to mention again, the health department mentioned about the mosquito control. There is a number for Plymouth County Mosquito Control. If you have questions, 781-585-5450, or you can call the health department, 508-946-2408. It's very serious. People have died from this already. Well, one person has this year. I've known people that are very ill from EEE and the West Nile virus, so please try to protect yourself. Use your DEET. I'm not a chemical person, but please use your DEET.
All right. I had the first one, the Mass Gaming Commission regarding Rainham Park proposal. Charlie, have we sent anything to them yet? Or, I think we should at least let them know that we're here and, if that goes through, it's going to have an effect on us from 24 and 495 somehow. It may have a detrimental effect depending on the crime rates and things as well. These things don't work in a vacuum. Conservation Commission letter. Pratt Farm does have a conservation plan, and they do follow it as best that they can. So sometimes, while it may not look like it's being kept up, that's the way it's supposed to look, because it's not necessarily a groomed field. They're following their conservation plan, so that's why the grass isn't mowed every week, basically, is what I'm saying. What's another one? I was interested in the positive effects letter as well. The cost was something I was curious about as well. $20 a month is something I guess we're gonna have to think about. And dam safety. I like dam safety.
Who doesn't?
I do. It's just something I'm interested in.
We almost got through.
And, well, you know what? We have a dam over at Pratt Farm that, depending on who you talk to, is good or bad. We have dams at Wareham Street. There's actually a couple of them. So, I don't know if anybody's going to go to it. If I had the day off, I'd love to go to it. And it's fun to say. So,
And you don't get in trouble.
right. I have a good joke about people who work at dams. The health department with the mosquito activity alert. Selectman Pacheco, actually, over in Raynham, is up in arms about the state spraying for mosquitoes. And I actually gave him a call today and asked him if there was anything I could do personally. But if I could reach out to him as a representative of the Board of Selectmen in the town of Middleborough, maybe we could write a letter supporting his cause for getting some aerial spraying for mosquitoes. There was a death, I think, 3 years ago in the town of Raynham due to EEE, so I'd hate to wait for something like that to happen before we write a letter of support for something like this. Middleborough is, I think, 70% wet. That's the bottom line. So we breed mosquitoes. That's what we do here. So if I would entertain a motion from the board to talk to Mr. Pacheco, Joe Pacheco, as a representative of the board regarding this, I'd appreciate it.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That's it for me. Anybody have anything else?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Milton?
just circling back to number 2, I just want to note that the VFW post 2188 has had a number of their employees go through the STOP training program, and I believe that's for alcohol serving. So it's good to see that they're keeping up with that.
Yep.
So they don't, making sure they don't serve underage and follow all the regulations.
Yep. Or over-serve.
Good to see that.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, poll vote?
Yes.
No poll vote?
We don't need
All right,
a
we
poll
don't
vote.
vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.